Leah here for Clarence Media, and today I'm having a chat with Debrah Novak. She's just in the process of getting set up for the farmers market, so thank you for taking some time out of getting organised today. I know you're very busy.
My pleasure. Thank you, Leah.
And Debrah is running as an independent in the upcoming state election for the Clarence electorate. So firstly, what inspired you to pursue a career in politics? And what are your core values that guide your decisions as a public servant?
Well, first of all, I'm not a public servant. I'm not on that pay scale. We actually operate on a different award, and that's as a state member you would be, but as an elected councillor, it's a different conversation altogether. So I'm also an sitting elected councillor at the moment on Clarence Valley Council. But what got me into politics in the first place was I've done a lot of campaigning on matters important to the Clarence Valley in the past. So every campaign I've been involved in, I've been successful at. You would not know that I've been involved at them because I actually usually sit in the background. I'm very quiet, I'm very strategic. I look at things and go, with my media background, I go, well, how do we tell this story and how do we gain traction with a politician? So that's my area of expertise, my area of hustle. And what my core values are based on lifelong values because my three best critics and ones that I have to face are my three children, and it's actually holding space for them and knowing that they respect and honour what I do as their mother, but also knowing that they respect me for what I do for them and our community. So they hold me to account. They're my three biggest, critics, and if I can't, inspire them to, lift, and there's something wrong with me.
Oh, well, I'm sure you're doing a fantastic job from what I've heard.
Well, you talked about values, and those values are, for me, are, truth, honesty, and always not being afraid to lean into those hard conversations. So being honest with myself, having a moral code is probably one of the biggest ones, because I feel that if you don't have a moral code, you're a lost ship at sea. Whereas if you have a moral code, you've got standards in which you live by.
Yep. Excellent. Now, so what causes... I've got HIP policies, but what causes would you like to go into that you have championed in the past?
Okay, so I have championed the Not a Drop campaign. So that was about damming the Clarence River and diverting it west. A domestic violence campaign where the coalition government reduced the funding to the Grafton Women's Refuge by $1 million, and we did a big petition signing actually here in the park here to get that money to come back to the Women's Refuge, which happened. We did a mighty big campaign around youth suicide and mental health in the Valley. So I was a part of the foundation group that actually started our Healthy Clarence Mental Health Strategic Planning Committee. I was also a part of help to the Highway to Hell small business folk who had lost $6 million in payments from a two-tiered company that went into liquidation, and so they were able to get their money back. So 25 mums and dads businesses were able to pull that $6 million back. And a number of the other things that I've been involved with have been murder cases. So the Clarence Valley has 10 cold cases. So I've been researching that, and I work behind the scenes with some of those stories. And one of them that we had, there was a big win was the young mum that passed away over in Aluka, and the two men that who were allegedly charged with her murder were let off. And then after the community petitioned and a big public outcry, it came back to court, and both those men were found guilty and both sentenced. So at the end of the day, it's community that can really, enabling community to stand up is what's probably one of the most important things to me.
Yep. Okay. So how do you plan to promote economic growth and job creation in the Clarence electorate? And what policies would you support to achieve those goals?
Okay, so it's depending on what sort of policies you're talking about, because local government has policies, state government has policy, federal government has policy, and North Coast Plan has policies.
What sort of things would you like to see happen at a state level?
Okay, at a state level. Well, look, I'm chair of an organisation called Clarence Valley Food Inc., and we've applied for funding twice now and got knocked back. And that was on the back of the bushfire recovery funding that seems to get a washout, everywhere else but here for some reason when it comes to the agri-food economy. So, we were really disappointed in that, and we've worked really hard as an organisation that we were originally funded by the federal government to step in to be the voice for the agri-food economy here in the Clarence Valley. So the main industry that employs the most number of people and has the most number of businesses is the agri-food economy. So it's extraordinary that it gets the least amount of love, I believe. And the farmers, makers and producers and bakers have been here since, well before white man arrived, but in the past 175 years, we've had our heritage industries of timber, seafood, dairy, beef, a couple of others. They have stood the test of time. They've been here for 150 years now, and they have evolved. They've expanded, contracted, and we actually are at a time of contraction, business contraction. And it's while we move from what they call Industry 3 into Industry 4. I know that sounds big and fancy and that, but what it is, we're moving from mechanical into the digital era. So as a press photographer, media representative, the media went through this change 15 years ago. So I moved from mechanical photography into digital photography. So I survived. And if I can survive, I can tell you anybody can survive. But it is, it just opens your world up. So it's about being flexible. It's about looking at how do we do things differently? How do we, with all this knowledge we've got now through computers, through Dr. Google, and there's so much knowledge there to help us be better in business, better humans and a better community. There's just simply no excuse for, failing, there's nothing wrong with failing, and you learn a lot of lessons by failing, and I think you should embrace failing. But failing can just be the learning steps, the baby steps before going into, doing things differently or, going into, change altogether.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
And what do you think the most pressing issue facing the people of the Clarence is?
Now, if you went on the Facebook sites, you'd swear it was the pool. Or if you went into Yamba, you'd swear it was the floods. Or if you went into Maclean, you'd swear it was the water. And look, there are many pressing issues. Let's face it, it's not just one. And it's actually quite frightening, to be honest. And I spoke at an event last night that I know that you were at, and I had thank you, Grafton Chamber of Commerce, big shout out there. And what happened was I was looking at just what you just said. What is the main issue? And I actually tried to, when I was studying, what was happening in the Richmond Valley, because it is the seat of Clarence. What's happening in Grafton, what's happening in Evans, what's happening in Minnewater. It was trying to find the common ground, and very difficult to find the common ground. And I've never seen it be so pear-shaped. But what I have seen in the past, from a political level, I might say, but when it has gone pear-shaped for us in the past, so whether it's through natural disasters, the thing that shines through the most when it looks ugly and days look grim is community.
Definitely.
Without any doubt, because when government fails you, when your politicians fail you collectively, when there absolutely is no shining star out there and you cannot see that silver cloud beyond that dark, that dark cloud, it's very difficult to lift sometimes. But what I see, and my, being involved in the media myself, and I've covered some of the darkest stories you could ever want to cover, but I can tell you there are so many great untold stories there that are amazing stories to inspire. And so it's those acts of courage and bravery, thinking outside the square, being the change maker. It's those stories that lift us to that next stage. And that's where I think we are at the moment. We're looking for ordinary people who are doing ordinary things to become extraordinary.
Yep.
And that's not a politician, that is not a political party, and that is not a government. We want our government and we want our political parties to lift as well, but they're resistant to change.
Yep.
They're resistant from moving from mediocrity. They're being resistant to, inspiring, because we haven't seen inspiring politics or leaders for a long time. They are boring beyond belief, and they're not charismatic. They're not, they're not inspiring. They're not being true to party values. They're not being true to community values, because at the end of the day, most of those parties have sold out to foreign ownership. They are not representing the community. They're not representing the best interests of Australia. What they're doing, they're actually representing the best interests of their party. So people need to understand that when they are watching spin and marketing, they need to read through that, because every political party is trying to gain the advantage at the moment. And people like me, who are an independent, who I represent community, my job on behalf of the community is actually to hold those parties to account.
Yep. Yep. And with my next question, you've probably covered it a bit with your talk about community just now, but how do you plan to address the issue of political polarisation and bring people from different backgrounds and viewpoints together?
You elect an independent, because an independent, in my role, even as an independent in council, my job is to work with all the parties, and I actually do get invited to different events by different politicians. So I'm already living that dream. I'm already working with the other parties. I have some really close friends who are all members of different parties, right? And the thing that we bring together individually is we put community ahead of them. Right? But when it's a party, when they talk about we're doing this on behalf of a community, their community is their political community. They're not talking about our community as a broad brush. What they're talking about is when they're talking about policy or decisions, that has to be filtered through a party system. When you're talking to an independent, stops there. And whatever an independent does, and does well and does best, is goes in and goes hard and negotiates what's in the best interest for the Clarence Valley, not any political party.
Yep. Thank you. And if people want to find out more about you, and what you stand for, where do they go to find you?
So first of all, they can ring me or email me or text me. Don't listen to any gossip out there at all, because I can guarantee you there's a lot of gossip, and always better to come to the source. And I respond to people at all hours of the day through all manner of digital platforms. My website's about to be upgraded with all my position statements on where I stand for passion projects, and I have quite a number of passion projects that people will be very interested in. And when I talk about...
What is your website, sorry?
So my website is just www.debrahnovak.au. So it's not .com.au, it's .au.
Just .au.
.au, and it's a landing page. It's up at the moment, so it is a landing page. And I started that website not just because I was running for state. What I want to do is I'd like to continue the conversation, political conversation, for our community, because I find that people get really confused around what local, state and federal politics do. And so by having a website that is independent, I'm not attached to any party. So I'm going to be giving independent advice and resources up there, so people get a better understanding of what the three parties do for each other, or not three parties, three layers of government.
We might have a chat on another day and about that.
Yeah,
and
for
you
sure.
can go over it for our
For
viewers.
sure. Yeah, for sure. No worries.
And okay, so is there anything else you'd like to add?
look, just be careful about, look, we are in National Party heartland, let's face it. And wasn't always that way. It's only been National Party for, I think, 30 years. But before that, it was, a couple of terms of Labor. But before that, it was the Country Party when, the Country Party actually meant something and had shared values here in the Seat of Clarence. They were good men, they were very traditional values that don't usually, sway with the wind, And we're looking at a game of politics now where we have, in terms of numbers and members in New South Wales, Labor have the most number of members with about 15,000. The Liberals have about 11,000. The Greens it drops down to the Greens, and then it drops down to the Nationals, then Fishers and Shooters, right? So the Nationals have actually lost a bit. So what I would be really careful about is who the Liberals will be actually wanting to, because, let's face it, all bets are off when you want to get in power between political parties. I actually don't roll like that because the only promise I make is to retain my integrity and my values. I don't make deals, right? So I negotiate, but I do not make deals because I can't live with that rubbish. I think it's rubbish. But people need to keep in mind when they vote this time, we're actually at a tipping edge of change here. And that change is they have the power of the future in their hands, right? And it is looking like on the polls at the moment, it's looking like it's going to be a hung parliament or a Labor government, right? And if you cannot bring yourself to vote Labor, and if you can't bring yourself, and we are talking about National Party heartland, if you can't bring yourself, those people can't bring themselves to vote for a Green, then their safest option, if they want traction in this next government, is to vote for an independent. Because at the end of the day, I still work with everybody. I respectfully work with everybody. And that's, to me, the most powerful tool because I listen. And I can help people understand, how they can get things done and raise their voice.
Yep. Okay. Thank you for your time today.
My pleasure,
good
always.
luck on the 25th.
Thank you.